Thank you, Leonard, for your kind introduction, and I'm really very emotional to be presenting here as like Kelly calls our center. Usually I'm in the backstage organizing scheme things, and here I am more in the front stage, and I'm really glad about that. I thank you all for being here, and also those who joined us by Zoom. And I also want to make a special note or thanks to Professor Dominique Müller and Stephanie Burkhardt for being very gracious in making all these changes of dates. Since last time, the last week, we couldn't have the lecture, so I thank you personally for that, for making it available today. Let me begin by reminiscing on the day I met Aide, the #1 bruja or witch healer of Villa de Loíza. Tonio, a very old #1 brujo of Loíza Aldea, had sent me to her because he had stopped working due to his frail health and said, Aide is a positive medium. She has a beautiful, clean cuadro. Cuadro is a spiritual power. As he had only her address, no telephone number, I would have to go first without setting an appointment if I wanted to meet her. I was quite apprehensive about doing this, but I felt the urge to meet her right away. Following his directions, I arrived by car without once having lost my way through highways, roads, and paths. When I arrived, it seemed to me that the house looked exactly like the others in the area, except for the yellow window, clean and colorless. Like the other houses, I then had an iron fence in front of the garden and the driveway, but it also had an entirely enclosed attached garage. There was no bell to ring. I felt intimidated and discouraged at finding all the entryways, the iron gate and the main garage doors closed, and no way to communicate that I was there to see her. It was already midday, and the temperature had risen to nearly 40 degrees Celsius, more or less like now here. The street was deserted. I called out a timid hello, no response. Seeing all the shades down, I ventured several more less hellos, all unanswered. I was about to leave when a black woman opened the front door and without approaching me even asked from far away in a raised voice, "What do you want?" I uttered the first thing that came stumbling to my mind, and was sent by Tonio to see Aide. Unsure whether she in fact was Aide or not, without a word, she turned and went back inside. When she returned a few minutes later, she told me that Aide was not working that day because she was ill and suggested that I come back another day. In a couple of days, she said. I insisted that I had not come to consult with Aide, but just to talk to her. I am from Philadelphia, I said, from the University of Pennsylvania. Again, she left abruptly, and when a few minutes later, I heard that the sound of keys turning, I was relieved. The woman finally opened the iron gate, and when we were at the door, she simply said, come in, and steered silently me directly into Aide's bedroom. In a comforting air-conditioned, dimly lit room, I distinguished a woman lying on a twin bed between white satin sheets and lace pillows, her lips painted red, her hair up in roller and neatly covered by a net. She smiled at me. As I begin introducing myself and telling her about my interest in Spiritismo, she takes over my explanation as if she already knew my intentions. I feel again relieved. I will not have to struggle to articulate my purpose or my reasons for doing research on such a topic, reasons I still have not figured completely out myself. I then conducts the content and pace of this our first encounter. I'm not feeling well today, she said. Spiritual work has its own risks. After days of work from dawn to dusk, this is what happens to me. I always feel ill afterward. So Tonio, the #1 group of Loíza, sent you to me. The #1 group of Villa de Loíza to me. He's the greatest. He's my spiritual father. My own father used to come to these veladas, the nighttime gatherings, open to the public. And I remember as a kid coming with my father at 5 a.m. to his altar home, which was already packed with people who had come from every corner of the island. But now Tonio is old. He begged me to take over his altar, but I can't. I don't have enough time for my people, my own people. You see me now? I have to rest after so many consultations. They drain me. I need my mother. So then I come here to my room. I turn on my air conditioning and tell Nina not to let anyone in. But I let you come see me because Sonia has sent you. And you say that you want to just talk to me, to make an interview about me. At this point, I find myself asking that always ready question, would you mind if I use my tape recorder? Sure, anything you want. I want people to know what a spiritismo is, what brujeria really is. You said you're from which university? I could come with you and tell them what a spiritismo really is, as I practice it, nice and clean. But the life of a bruja is not easy, as you see. I suffer a lot. This is why I have my Bible here by my bed. I read, I pray, I cry. This is how I cleanse myself. But I'm happy. I don't have to eat. I just need my spiritual bread. She tells to me, you have the spiritual power of a gypsy woman. She tells me as if I'm about to leave, and without asking me if I can, she said, come back tomorrow, early in the morning, and begin working with me. Nina will open the gates for you. My spiritual apprenticeship had just begun. Okay. Okay. As I began my field work, which I did the next day, as she ordered me to come, I was startled by weird objects and arrangements. Hanging, as you see here, from a large bronze cross, I noticed a small packet, a magic work I learned that had been left there to be empowered by the cross. How could the same cross that once persecuted brujos be now empowering their magic works? My attention is driven both to the things composing her altar room and ways in which she changes, almost on a daily basis, as a result of the many consultations she had per day and the trabajos or magic works she performed. I also pay attention, special attention to the movements of her body, as I see a day in full spirit possession or just in an imperceptible, even trance. My eyes are drawn to the cleansing spiritual gestures, passing with spiritual energies via arms and hands, the snake-like movements of the torso when sensing the fluids of the spirit's presence, which keeps repeating themselves on a daily basis, every time. In the meantime, I see, whatever I see, I take photos of every ritual move and configuration. Why I do that, the tape recorder is turned on at 8 a.m. and turned off at the end of the working day. My camera records those instances in which both material changes and recurrent bodily gestures are unfolding. I end up producing a corpus of more than 1,000 photos and hundreds of hours of recordings. By the way, I gave a full copy of both photographs and tapes, which were soon integrated in Heide's consultations as evidence of her spiritual power. In fact, as a way of asserting her superior spiritual power, especially in front of other witches, other healers, she often used these photos to show off my dedication, my obsession with her work, following every minute, every ritual movement that she had made. Before I begin with my actual presentation of my photographic essay, I want to say a few words about Puerto Rican brujeria, really very, very succinctly. I developed that in the first book, half of the book is dedicated to that. So I'm not trying to centralize the look, are you there? Anything about Puerto Rican brujeria, but I will just mention a few words. Puerto Rican brujeria, I translated it for English-speaking people as witch healing. It's a vernacular Afro-Latin religion, closer to Brazilian Umbanda than to others, and related to Cuban Santería, Brazilian Candomblé, and Haitian and Dominican voodoo. It encompasses indigenous practices, popular Catholicism, French Cardican Spiritism, that is the Spiritism of Alain Kardec, the French Alain Kardec, also African rituals that were brought by enslaved Africans to the whole Caribbean, and maybe also charismatic Protestantism, believe it or not. Brujeria includes, very briefly, all sorts of rituals, among them divination rituals, spirit possession, exorcism, healing rituals, and the making of magic works. Healers are not initiated, they are given healing gifts by God, either in a dream or a vision. Through their lives, they acquire spiritual protections, that is spiritual power, all sorts of entities, guardian spirits, which form their quadra spiritual, their spiritual power, which I, in another place elsewhere, I call spiritual capital. They acquire that as part of who they are as healers. Now, in terms of the one interesting part of brujeria is the ethical basis of these practices, which follow very much the Spiritist ethos. And so here, I will just mention the Spiritist laws of cause and effect, the law of love, and the law of reincarnation, all three, which basically, in a nutshell, really means that everything we do in this world has an effect in this world, not in the other one. So we need to keep and be sure to live a very clean, spiritual, morally based life in this life in order to get blessings. Okay, that's a very crucial term, to receive blessings, bendiciones, which I find quite relevant to the idea of baraka. Blessings in that sense, which are both material and spiritual. They're both together. There's no separation of them. And the idea of blessing or bendiciones are also behind the notion, the key notion in brujeria, which is the idea of manifestations, manifestaciones. Everything has, every spiritual power has a manifestation in material terms, and every material manifestation is a reflection of some spiritual aspect. So there's a complete one, two sides of the same, I would say, the same point here. Now, a few more words, I think, on manifestaciones, I think I should dedicate, because it's so crucial. Manifestaciones or manifestations, I like to think about it as the thinghood of spirit and the spirit of things, you can say that. In terms, they use the words, the verbs materializar or to materialize, very similar to English, to manifest or manifestar, and to cast, plasmar. And these ideas are really, these notions, emic notions, are behind what I call in my other work in the book, a form of spiritualized matter or a materialized spirit. So they're both sides of the same coin. Now, in terms of the spirit in matter, commodities and consumerism, well, if this is not, I didn't discover America with that. The anthropological and works in anthropology and philosophy have long discussed this thing. And on purpose, I refer to this with a kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. I like to reflect on how anthropologists, from a westernized kind of perspective, looked at processes that I looked from a completely different grounded perspective. So what we can see here is really they use and I'm inspired by Marx's commodity fetishism, who was the first to talk about the ghostly nature of consumer practices. So it's not only religious people that talk about the ghostly presence. And here, as you can see, I just jotted down a few words: animism, fetishism, or fetish, the thought and particles in Australia among the Aboriginals, and verbs that also were used to dismiss these kinds of practices, like to hypothesize and to defy. Now it's like they were used as terms that showed the ignorance of people rather than look at the spiritual side of their practices. And so this is a kind of, I would say, a critique, very light critique I'm launching here just to make us reflect on that. And on the same level, I want also to mention excellent ethnographic work that has been done, looking at the spirit in matter, or the matter in spirit, commodities and consumerism. And I hope nobody will get offended. I just mentioned a few here. One of them is Laura Kendall, who wrote a piece called Hungry Ghosts, and a piece called Capitalist Spirits. This last one really influenced my own research, my own dissertation, because she looked at the changes in Korea as an effect of consumerism, and looked at how spirits becomes more consumer. They themselves are eager consumers, and they like to be fed expensive offerings, not just anything like they used to do in previous times. The second anthropologist I want to mention very quickly is Stefan Panier. Some of you may know him. He worked in Cuba, and he came up with this notion of ritual labor and exchanges, which I also take in my work here, to talk about what goes on during ritual. There is exchange of money. So spirits are very eager to be paid with real money, especially in Cuba during the special period when there was no money. So during the ritual, there were exchanges of money done on a regular basis. The third person I want to mention is Birgit Meyer, who wrote about the spirit in that image. That is how to make sense of the slippage of pictorial representation becoming the actual presence of the spirit. So here she follows the logic of the icon. The spirit is in the image. It does not represent the spirit. And lastly, I want to mention ethnographies, the ethnographies of Hirschkin, Mahmoud, and Linky, who show that in certain versions of Islam, material disciplines or spiritual economies are essential to the production of the pious subjectivity. And they are really serve me very well because they also show this conjunction between the material and the spiritual elsewhere, not just in Puerto Rico. Now, again, I need to make some reflections on my methodology here and my presentation. And I want to make a few reflections on why I decided to have a photographic essay. First of all, here I connect myself to the genealogy of visual anthropology, especially Franz Boas, who is called Papa Boas in cultural anthropology, not because of all his work, but because he paid really close attention early on at the end of the 19th century among the Kwakiutl and the Hamadza. He paid special attention to what he called motor habits, dance gestures, reflecting for him, unlike his colleagues who were biological evolutionist anthropologists, for him, these gestures reflected on cultural moral principles that were kind of the object of his recording. He took very much care in taking photographs, and when he couldn't take photographs, he had somebody draw these different gestures of ritual, which are documented. And in some cases, he even took pictures of himself semi-naked and in some others with a suit like a good European guy, doing these gestures that we saw in ritual. Of course, I put aside the critique of Boaz's a kind of framing of these traditional dances or gestures when in his dioramas for exhibition, when he actually framed and he put, I don't know if you saw it, it's really amazing. He put these kinds of pieces of cloth in front of people kind of staging the authentic traditions of these people. So putting these things aside, I think I am drawing much from his early interest in gesture. The other person is Roland Barthes, and particularly I was influenced by his notion of punctum. He refers to punctum as an unexpected poignant detail in a photograph that, quote, pierces or pricks viewers sensorially. That is, it makes you kind of click. It's like the photo, the first photo I showed you with the cross and the little packet. For me, that was punctum. That made me kind of get a kind of a shock because it was completely unexpected. It pierced me. And I had hoped that it pierced you as audience looking at this photo. So these are the two kind of main influences that I have here to mention. Now, my argument here has two parts. One focus on things and one on bodies. So I'm putting together two perspectives on matter. Now, let me just also unravel where I'm coming from, my perspectives on matter, which are not mutually exclusive, but are different perspectives that I try to put together. One is the historical perspective that looks at the phenomenological, existential, material conditions for the constitution of the sacred and sacred materials, objects, and rituals. In my first book, Witchcraft and Welfare, I dedicated half of my book to that kind of project, the historical aspect. Historical materialism, actually, in a short way. So I was very much influenced by ethno-historical work being done and looked at macro and micro perspective, historical perspectives together. The next perspective is the representational, which is known to us from classical anthropology, all with that. You know, symbolism, matter as a conduit, right, to reach the sacred as a symbol or representation of the sacred. So classical anthropologists did that all the time. I'm not really following that vein of work at all. And instead, I'm following more the presentational perspective, which looks at matter as in itself, as the sacred. So matter or things are an embodiment of the sacred. In my second book, Healing Dramas, I focus on matter as sensual embodiment of the spirits and rituals as sensual dramas. And there's many people who, I'm not the only one, of course, and we have here also some fellows that are following this kind of presentational perspective on material ritual, on the material aspects. I can only mention here maybe C. Toussaint Vancassi, Holbrad, Webkin, Manning and Mendy, Peter Pels, Romberg, myself, and Shepard. Not the mother, but the daughter, worth reading her. Very good work. Okay, so here we move now, I hope, to the beginning of my presentation, the essay. And as I said before, I'm putting together two arguments in order to look at ontological ritual transformations. And that happen of both things and bodies. In the first part, I traced the transformations as they were embodied in the material objects and configurations of figurines and candles. I observed how mere plaster figurines that were mass-produced, bought in a store, right, morphed into holy objects, into the abode and material location of a deity or orisha. In the second part, I explore bodily transformations of participants doing divination, exorcism, and healing rituals. I showed that gesture, different gestures that indicate in one case the presence of the invisible entities, or in some other cases, it shows that cleansing gesture aimed at getting rid of negative influences or negative energies. So both kind of gestures have been tracing and documenting. The truth is, I'm putting together, I thought I would make myself easy. By putting together two arguments, I developed into separate papers, articles that were already published, one on altars and one on the body. And I thought, if I do that, I have to have a reason. So my reason is to try to be on these already published papers, to be some kind of theoretical claim that goes beyond the division between objects and bodies, and try to look at transformational ontologies really in one under one kind of theoretical framework. So let's see it work. Usually anthropologists have done it separately. On the one hand, anthropologists are waiting on the fetish carnivals, and on the other, they've written about body hexes, bodily dispositions, or how societies remember. But now I'm trying to put these two kind of bodies of work together. Now let's begin with looking at the first part. Matter matters. The first part is focused on things, and here I'm going to be talking about processes that I call activation. I look at configurations of things. I look at processes that they call baptism, at consecration of spaces, and the creation of spatial proxies. Okay, so in the first part, okay, I have to reveal also the legacy where I'm coming from, what I'm trying to do in looking at these transformations of things in the altars. So first of all, this is the legacy. I will look at transformation rituals, specifically at the ritual labor that goes into these transformations. And I'm taking these ideas and mentioned before from Panier. And I argue that they are the result of indeterminate manifestations of the spirits and their wings. So it's not the healers that direct these things, but the spirits. They visually convey this transformation, visually convey the daily changes of altars or the ritual life of altars. And here I'm drawing on a pipeline that well known to be on the social life of things. I trace how ordinary spaces and objects are transformed into mythical abodes, spirits, and entities as a result of a dream, a vision, or the making of trabajos directed by the spirits. I also show how the composition and configuration of elements in an altar respond to the spirits and their needs as much as to their human owners. I argue that these spaces are not just the context for ritual action, they are in themselves ritual action. So this is a huge difference in looking at spaces. They are definitely alive. They happen, they do, and when their owners die, they cease to exist. So they're living extensions of their owners, definitely. And the last thing I want to argue here, and I really want to discuss it with you later on, is the idea of ontological transformations that go along in these kinds of rituals in the altar rooms. And I'm drawing here from Barthel's idea of transformation forms of existence, which is an interesting piece that looks at wind as spirit and spirit as wind. So again, moving in and out from these different states or ontological states. Okay, So now here, pictures. I want to look at pictures, and here what you can see is what I said meant before, a configuration of different elements in the ritual, and it changes by day. So here you can see the photograph of Jesus, behind some what you see in the plate here. I should point it here is La Flor de Jericó, which is done put for healing, and in front of the El Santo, ¿cómo se llama? I'm missing now his name, the little one. Here you can see the same Jesus in front of a sour orange and some other elements that were put together for another trabajo, for another magic work. And here what you can see is the configurations of los velones. These are very important, the huge candles, that each is dedicated to a specific spirit, a specific orisha. They have different colors, they have different kind of scents, and they're placed strategically in the altar to achieve some kind of goal. In behind, you can see the Amerindian entities in the background. Now this one, I will maybe say a little bit more and talk to you more about this one. The different arrangements of the altar was something that I was attracted all the time, and so I recorded pictures of every day of how it changed. But here, I would like to just mention here, you can see really what people have called a mishmash of spirits, deities, which was really called in the literature like syncretism. I refuse to call it syncretic, even though you can see here a Buddha in front of a Jesus, and to the right you see this green, it's an Amerindian deity called La Dominadora, the dominator, who's kind of holding a snake. So for me, this was not just mere mishmash or syncretism. I call these, as in many other religions, Creole religions, I call these process ritual piety. Simply as a result of irreverent, and here it's stressed on irreverent appropriations, or plunder of hegemonic ritual symbols, not just fusion of seemingly disconnected elements. So here what I want to stress is the power aspects and the domination of hegemonic symbols and the use, the plunder of these symbols by figures. Bless you. Here what you can see is Aide performing a trabajo, a magic work, and you see her reading. This is a social security response to a woman that was requesting to raise her social security money due to health issues or health disabilities, and she was refused. So I is reading, and I argue that there are kind of brokers between the individuals on the stage. She's reading as an agent, really, and she not only suggested this woman goes to consult this person in the building of the welfare she knows, but she also conducted here a ritual, a magic work to empower and to help to empower this request and help this woman get what she wanted. So you can see here this configuration of these different really necklaces placed together with all sorts of prayers and the actual form, the actual letter she got, and all that conformed or became a magic work. In this case, this is a wedding. This is a spiritual wedding, literally. That was made for a couple that was quarreling a lot all the time. And I then decided that they needed a spiritual wedding, not an actual wedding, but a spiritual wedding. So she had them buy a three-layer pepper-rich farm kind of coconut cake. She took one piece in the middle out, which she ate with me. We consumed it together, that is ritually, because we were making this trabajo together. And then she placed the groom and the bride inside the cave and showered it with all sorts of gold and silver shades to increase their well-being and their prosperity, and then threw on top of it some honey and pieces of cinnamon sticks, as you can see. And then the whole trabajo went back into the same box and placed in front of the Buddha to be empowered for a week. And this is the same trabajo for another man, again, placed in front of the Buddha. It is a form of entrusting, right? So the altar room is full of trabajos that are entrusted to different saints, different commissions. This one has to do, where is the other one? Wait a second. Something went. Wait a second. Yes, okay. It should have shown something different, but this is the order. So what you can see here is an activation process. They call it a baptism. So these beaded necklaces were bought at the Botanica. They are plastic beads. Everyone can buy them, but they do nothing until they are consecrated, until they are baptized, until they are prepared, until they are sacralized. So here you can see the beaded necklaces being baptized in order to become then a protective amulet for the people who wear it. Here, the activation process is done by the smoke of a cigar. The cigar is the favorite food, the favorite offering for the Amerindian Indio. They call it Indio. It's the Amerindian spirit, and this is what she was doing, kind of feeding her Santa. Her Santa is the figure that she's holding. Her Santa, her head is La Caridad del Pobre, which in African, in Santería, is Ochun also. So it's Ochun, but also appears as La Caridad del Pobre in Catholic saint hagiography. Here, Aide is opening, and this is the same thing she does for opening and closing her altar room. That is, the room is not sacred, it's just a room until she opens it, and then it becomes a sacred place. And I'm sure that each of you in your own work also have seen or followed rituals in which a space is being demarcated as a sacred space in which sacred things can happen. So she does that on a daily basis. And this is what I call a spatial transformation or consecration of the space. Here we can see there's some women entrusting a trabajo, a magic work in the rainforest directly to Shango. And this is the abode of the warriors, of the different warriors. In this case, they are going directly to the rainforest where they live, these entities live. But in some other cases, as in this case, you don't need to go to the rainforest, because in some cases, as McCarthy Brown showed in a very interesting work, I just pressed it, a bathroom can be a place where Yemanya, the Orisha owner of the waters, the sea, can reside. So anything can become a substitute. A sacred space can become a substitute within your own home. This is what she wrote in a very good article about a high-rise building, sacred spaces in New York, and how people adapt the spaces in their homes to be sacralized. So this is happening all the time, and this is the consecration. I showed here a photo after Aide had a dream where her Santa asked her, said, "You have to create a chapel for me." After that dream, she knocked down a few walls in the house and created a special bigger chapel to worship and to venerate and as an offering to her Santa. And she had all her house painted in yellow, as you see here. Yellow is the color of Ochun, of La Caridad. So with this, I come to the end of the first part. And now I move to the second, if you're still with me. Okay. So the second part of this presentation, as I told you, explores the processes or transformations, ritual transformations of bodies. And I call these processes subjectivation processes. I look closely at gestures and poses and the effect that these poses and gestures kind of create. The legacy, again, I want to disclose my legacy. I'm following here Pascal's dictum, first me and then believe. This is my motto as well in all my work. Of course, I draw on Marcel Mauss's body techniques, body hexes, Dieu, Foucault technologies of the self and body dispositions, Talal Assad's discipline to virtue and prescriptive action. His work on monasteries, it really has influenced me a lot in the way in which the right virtue, the right sentiment is created through bodies, through rituals of the body or body techniques, technologies. And my own use of Austin, the illocutionary power of words, I kind of extended it to gestures. So I looked at the illocutionary power of gestures, or how gestures do, not only words that do. And from Jean-Pierre Varnier, I took the idea of the technologies or techniques of the subject and effect. And here, let me just mention a little bit more in depth. I think he did a very interesting, he made a really good argument saying that we usually consider the subject as operating on subjects, right? As operating on the material world. But he said that subjects are also operated upon by the material world in what he calls subjectivation processes. So the efficacy of ritual action should be explored both by matter and the human subject, even though classical ritual studies tend to limit efficacy questions to the manifest goals of ritual, excluding the latent goals of rituals, that is the transformation of subjects and their effect. In this vein, I had argued elsewhere or asked elsewhere, where does belief stop and do memories of the flesh begin? And here I will just show you idea posing here with the Santa. This is not just the posing for a photograph. The posing is an invocation, is a summoning, is an assertion. So every pose has that kind of illocutionary power to do. Here she's smoking, she's in trance, and she's become, by smoking the cigar of the Amerindian spirit, she has become, in that moment, she has become that Indio. And with that healing power of the sacred smoke, she's also healing the woman in her altar. Another very common gesture is the transmission of spiritual fluid. It's very common in Spiritism. The transmission of spiritual energies through the hands, through gestures, and you can see that in different parts of the world, even in different practices outside of Puerto Rico. These gestures you see here, she's giving her own, transmitting her own spiritual energies to a woman here on the left, and to another client on the right. And I'm sure that those working with rituals all over the world will recognize these gestures. There's something in common with them. Here, there's what they call unión de pensamientos, union of thoughts, where you create kind of a bonding between your energies and the other person. And here is a gesture that I'm sure you recognize. What do you think? What is she doing? What is this gesture? Trance, yeah, she's kind of being kind of in her own trance. And this is a very common gesture among brujeria followers and spiritistas. You can see here, and I'm not going to get into the ritual themselves. I just want you to pay attention to what I was looking at. It's the gestures, the hands. Look at the hands. In one case, it's here, it's here, it's here. You know, all these gestures say something, and they are kind of forms of subjectivation. You become a practitioner by being, by moving in those terms, in those senses. So these gestures are, in this case, they were all healers, and they were trying to get him into a trance state. So they were helping him, encouraging him with these gestures. Again, here you can see Reina, she's the assistant in the middle. She was possessed by very negative spirits, and so Aida is trying to protect her from behind. I'm sure that you've seen that many times when somebody's possessed. The assistants are trying to protect the person's body, the materia, from not getting hurt. Here you can see this woman with the same gesture of Aida, you know, doing like this. This is the client, the blonde woman is the client who got possessed in the middle of a consultation. Aida in the right is being possessed by the Indio. Again, you can see these gestures signaling that it's not them who are speaking. And here I'm not talking, you know, it's mute. They're mute, they're not speaking. In the special issue that I'm writing with my colleagues, my fellows here, we are going to be talking about what they say. Here it's don't see anything, don't hear their voices, you just see their gestures. And that was the object of my presentation here. And here you can see, I created a new neologism I call the intergesturality and effect. And here, my point is to show you how the iconography of Catholic rituals and the representations of these Catholic rituals and Jesus actually as a healer enters the world and the practices of brujos. And I think this picture tells a long story. I don't have time here to get very in-depth into that, but I think here what I was trying to show is the idea of imitatio Christi. And that was something that was that appears in the Gospel and also in the writings of the 15th century devotional books attributed to Thomas à Kempis, where the idea is that through imitation and emulation of the life of Jesus, you become more spiritual, enlightened as Jesus, taking him as a model. But moreover, these gestures are not just emulating Jesus, they are summoning Jesus' healing powers by these gestures. So that's my point here in showing you this gesture. You see here as well. And these are different gestures that are really emulating Jesus and the law of love that I mentioned earlier on. Again, here. And the truth is that brujos are really, they invoke Jesus not only in gestures, but also in aphorism, in all sorts of things. They say, I, like Jesus, I am dedicating, sacrificing myself to my people because this is the gift. So all their lives of sacrifice are kind of taken as reflection, as a copy, as an emulation, as a magnetic kind of correspondence with Jesus' life. Here again, this is again, look at the gestures and how they repeat themselves, they come back again and again. And just to sum up, I think that we're okay with time. What I was trying to do here is really look at the performative significance of religious gestures and then in manipulation of things, suggesting both immediate effectiveness in transforming the emotional, perceptive, and in some cases, physiological states of participants, and the cumulative efficacy in shaping the body and affective predisposition of spiritism. Yeah. The idea, my main argument is that my ethnographic material suggests that the efficacy of embodied magic technologies in constituting the religious subject and the appropriate effect are done without recourse to theology or indoctrination. That is, belief doesn't enter here at all. And here, let me end with a photo of myself with Aide. And we are quoting, I write, okay, because it's not a real unification of thought, but we did it on purpose just for the photo. So we are quoting that gesture, that original gesture. And with that, I want to thank you for your attention. I finish here.